Hi guys, welcome to this very interesting topic called as penetration testing, your journey from zero to hero. I'll be sharing you the insights on how you can start your career in this very interesting domain based on my experiences and how you can excel further based on the skill sets, what skill sets you'll require, how you can get into the domain, into the industry, and what kind of client expectation would you have to meet. So I'll be sharing you all these details in the next course of 30 minutes. Meanwhile, if you have any kind of questions, something comes into your mind, you can put it in the chat box. I'll be happy to take your questions in the comments later after finishing my presentation. Before I start, let me introduce myself. So, for me, my name is Nikhil Agarwal. I'm engineer by qualification, a consultant by profession, hacker at heart, and a researcher by passion. Currently, I'm working as manager cyber risk advisory at Deloitte, Singapore, and I'm leading the cloud security practice here. Apart from doing the normal consulting work, I regularly enjoy sharing knowledge within the community, and this webinar is one part of that. You can find me in various global technical conferences around the globe as a speaker or panelist sometimes. And I also do enjoy giving workshops on various technical topics in various community and local chapters in the cities. So you can get in touch with me. Here are my some contact coordinates. In later, in case this presentation is not enough, definitely feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be happy to share with you more details on this topic. To start with, I'd like to share with you the agenda of today's webinar. We'll be going through what is penetration testing, why do companies hire penetration testers, what are different types of penetration testing, scope of penetration testing, what do you do in penetration testing, then what are the industry standard approaches and methodologies which are required in penetration testing which you have to follow, and how can you be a penetration tester. We'll also see some popular tools which are there, which we use normally in penetration testing, and some of the career path in case you are very interested in this domain, how you can pursue your career in this cyber domain. We'll look at take a part of that as well. Post that, in case you have any kind of questions, please feel free to put it in the comment box. As I said, I'll be happy to take it in there. So guys, as you already know, we are living in a world where we don't own the data which we are using. Everything, whatever you use, be it on social media or be it on your personal laptops or mobile phones, the data is the key. And if you look at, you don't owe the data, but the data reveals a lot of information about you. So in today's world where everything is digitalized and everything is coming onto your laptops or on your fingertips, there is a growing cyber risk which is happening, and because of that, this topic gains a lot of popularity and importance at the same time. Penetration testing is a more industrialized word of ethical hacking. We also call ethical hacking in industry as penetration testing. What is penetration testing or ethical hacking? Is basically a stimulated attack on your systems or your assets, which could be your network or an applications, to demonstrate what security loopholes are there in your assets. That's basically a core, but all these kind of attacks are performed in a very controlled and simulated environment without causing any harm to your actual production environment or actual assets. So that's a more kind of informations which we have to take care while performing this activity. I'll be coming to those in a bit detail later. But when we talk about the penetration testing, what are various things which you can penetrate or where you can perform ethical hacking now is, you see a lot of companies are moving to cloud. We see a lot of internet of things, IoT devices which are there, smart homes, smart devices which are there in the market right now. We see a lot of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum. A lot of cryptocurrencies are coming. So with these new technologies which are coming up into the market, security becomes a very key aspect of business. And security is not just as a business unit or a business function, but it is actually coming as a very important critical part for businesses when it comes to the revenue as well. So that's one of the reason why a large amount of organizations are increasing and taking cybersecurity very seriously. And when we talk about cybersecurity, penetration testing is something which is very proactive and everybody does it. So I'll share more details on it in my later slides. If we see roughly in the last 3 years what has happened around us, we see any popular brand which you see, if you see the slides carefully, I'm sure you will find a lot of popular which you can find here, which you may be using on your daily basis as well. You'll find them being hacked in last 3 years. Now, when you see this slide, you should ask yourself a question that what did these guys do? What kind of things they didn't did well that this incident happened to them? And these are not just a normal startups or such industries which are not serious. These are pretty good industries in the market right now. So we have to, if we ask ourselves what resulted in this, what I can say is maybe a less proactive or less mature cyber security program in their organization is one of the cause these things happen. And how we can ensure that such kind of incidents doesn't happen, definitely a proactive approach on any cyber program would be the best solution. So we'll see one of those proactive approach. There is a series of proactive approach in cybersecurity. We cannot look at the one frame of mind. So one of the way which we will see today in our webinar is the penetration testing. So what is penetration testing? As I discussed earlier, a penetration test known as pen test or PT, whatever you can call it, anything, PT, pen test, or as I told you, ethical hacking is an authorized simulated cyber attack on a computer system performed to evaluate the security of that system. Here, system doesn't imply your laptop or your desktop, but it could be an application, it could be a database, it could be a server, or it can even be the mobile which you are having in your hand. So system could be anything, but the main thing which you have to understand is you have to perform the hacking keeping ethics in mind. That's why we call it ethical hacking. And your objective is to give out or to identify the loopholes which are present by showing it through hacking. So that's the objective. So you have to be very careful when you're performing this activity. There's a very thin line between ethical hacking and hacking. So you always ensure when you're working in the industry, you don't cross that line. Okay. Any other kind of confusion on this? What is the scope of ethical hacking, or how ethics and the normal penetration test differs? Feel free to put your questions in the comment box. I'll be happy to take it later. So very interesting topic. One of the very interesting reasons why you are attending this webinar: why companies hire pen testers, why do they need pen testers? So right now, if you see in your basic laptops, or if you are working somewhere, your company laptops, any kind of device which you see, you must be having antivirus or a firewall which would be there, which would be preventing you with the basic security threats which are there in the market. But we all know that any kind of softwares will not be enough. Any kind of these solutions which you use will never be enough to save or to safeguard your security. You do always need due diligence and proactive approaches. And that's one of the reasons why pen testers help organizations to test their loopholes in the existing systems when they already have the solutions in place. Because a remote hacker will not just assume which solutions are you using, but he'll try to use his skills based on everything, on all the permutation and combinations which are there. So one of the reason why companies hire pen testers is to see what are the hidden vulnerabilities before remote hacker does. That's one of the reason, that you catch it before somebody else do. Then if you find a vulnerability before a hacker or someone with a malicious intent does, it saves you a lot of cost and reduces your time, which is a very key thing. Cost definitely is a business enabler, and you can save a lot of cost if you do a proactive action. That's why pen testing is very, very important. Another reason which I find very relatable right now in the market is a lot of companies are doing pen testing just as a tick box exercises for meeting the compliance requirement, but they are not doing extensive pen testing. And that is a reason why when we see the list of the companies which were breached earlier, the reason why they were breached is because a lot of companies nowadays, they believe in tick box, or what we say is compliance based pen testing, which is actually just for the sake of getting the certificates or the compliance, but not into the lines of security. So because the compliance, definitely they have this restrictions that they will have to do the pen testing. Then brand reputation is another very important thing. Definitely, I'm sure as a customer or as a user, you will never be ready to go to a particular company if it has been breached or it has been hacked. So that's one of the major reason to protect that brand identity, to maintain that brand image between the users. A lot of companies do this kind of pen testing activities. And one of the important reason is to develop very efficient or mature cybersecurity practice. Penetration testing is one of the very, very important step in the industry. So what are the different categories of penetration testing? We'll see this. There are major three categories of penetration testing. One, black box, gray box, and white box. What are this? Black box is wherein you don't have any hack it or trying to access the vulnerabilities based on your own experience and knowledge and skill sets. Then the other type of testing is gray box, wherein you know partial or you know some information about the target, maybe their usernames, maybe a bit of the functions, how they work. So that's one of the next way industry do this penetration testing. And the last one is white box, wherein we know the complete target very carefully. We have seen the target and we have all knowledge of the target and we do the security testing. When it comes to the industry, generally the clients go for gray box testing or black box testing. And most of the time, if I have to say, that gray box is the most popular one which happens. So when we talk about pen testing, what generally comes in the scope? What all things you can do penetration testing of, or what all things does clients want you to test or hack? Then first of thing, the primarily I have divided into six categories, but it could be more or less depending on different views. First, very important is the network. The network should be penetrated, should be tested with all the security flaws which could be there. Then your applications, which could be either mobile based or web based or API based, these should be tested. Then your wireless devices which are there, that should be tested for any vulnerabilities. Your IoT devices like your CCTV cameras and a lot of smartphones or smart devices which are there, those should be tested. Then if your infrastructure is over cloud, that should be thoroughly tested with this penetration testing things. And the last part is, after you have tested the processes and your technologies, you should also test your people. So people is you or the employees. So you also have to test their awareness, how they are aware about the recent cyber threats. And for that, social engineering and phishing are two very common things which you can use when it comes to penetration testing. Now, what are the approaches, common approaches when it comes to penetration testing? There are six main areas where this approach and methodology lie. First is pre-engagement interaction, then the intelligence gathering, then threat modeling and vulnerability analysis, then exploitation, post-exploitation, and the final very important part is reporting. I'll share more details in the coming slides. So the first of important part is the pre-engagement or the documentation or just setting up the scope meeting, wherein before starting any kind of project, what you do is you gather the scope from the client, what kind of application, how many user roles, how many pages does he wants to test, what are the different solutions which are there. You define the timelines, what would be the start date, end date, you define the objectives, you define the contact points. So these are few questions which you discuss with the pre-engagement phase with the client, which helps you in the later phases. Then very important part of pre-engagement is scope. Your scope should be very clear and should be noted down carefully, because a change in the scope will change your efforts and definitely complete when it comes to the cost wise or when it comes to the efforts wise, days wise, anything can change. So scope is a very important part to be discussed in the pre-engagement meeting. The second phase is intelligence gathering, or we also call it as reconnaissance, wherein we select a target and we gather the informations about it. So it's basically get to know about your target, what kind of function features does it have, what kind of services are being running, and there are various ways of doing it. You can use OSINT, open source intelligence frameworks. You can use footprinting. Some tools are there which I'll share in the later slides. There are some other mechanism which you can use to identify information about the target. So knowing your target is a very important step when it comes to hacking, and you should know your target very carefully. The next phase of this information gathering is getting more information which helps you for the later phases. What those information would be? Information like what are the physical areas where that asset is located, if there are any network information which you can get like IP addresses, organization chart, or any kind of informations where that particular asset is there. So these all are sensitive information which we are actually looking for when it comes to information gathering phase. Next, very important is threat modeling. In case of threat modeling, what we do is we look at the business side or the business aspect of that asset, and we analyze what kind of threats could be there to that asset. So we assume that there is a attacker who can access or can ruin that particular asset for us, and then we do a complete threat modeling, what are different attack vectors it can use, what are different kind of payloads attacker can use on that particular system, and try to come up with a threat modeling analysis, what kind of things can be done. The next part, very important, is vulnerability analysis, wherein we start the testing phase and we start looking for any loopholes which we can find in the system or your application which you are testing. There are two ways of doing the vulnerability analysis. One is a passive way, wherein you are just doing the traffic monitoring. We are basically not, if you're not basically interacting with the target, but you are just sniffing it. So that's what passive is. Then there is more from vulnerability analysis. But vulnerability analysis is way different. Analyzing the vulnerability. But in case of penetration testing, you will be exploiting the vulnerability. So that's a major difference between vulnerability analysis and penetration testing. So you should not get confused that VA and PT are same. They are definitely different, but sometimes in the industry we use it commonly, because for doing the PT you need to do VA definitely, but VA is not PT. Going ahead, we come to important part of penetration testing where we do the exploitation. Once you find the loopholes, what your next target would be to attack it or to see how you can gain control of those vulnerabilities. For that, you have to run phase in which you can do it, like Metasploits and Exploit DB has a lot of payloads which you can use or in scripts which you can use. And apart from that, there are manual pen testing, manual payloads as well, which you can use while exploiting these kind of vulnerabilities. Post exploitation, once you have exploited it, the very important thing which we have to do is you have to get more information and you have to maintain the access. Your game is not over after you have exploited the system, but post exploitation makes a very important part of this pen testing, wherein you gather more information about the system. Once you have entered in there, you see more information about the network, where it is connected, what kind of IP LAN network it is having. You get more details and you try to install a backdoor into the system so that in future if you have to come back, then you don't have to do all these activities again. So that's one of the major reason why post exploitation phase is very important. Now the most important part, the probably the reason why client is paying you as well, the report. So report, I have taken the sample from offensive security. I'm sure you would know about offensive security. So offensive security, this is a sample report which I have taken. So basically in the reporting is a part wherein you have to report all the vulnerabilities which you have identified along with the issues and the approaches what you have followed, and you have to report them in a proper formal language along with all the basic details how you did it step by step along with the screenshots. So that is very important. I have shared more reports. So here you can see how you have summarized the result. This is the last part as I see of penetration test and very important. A lot of times people don't like it, but what I say is this is very important. This is the main reason why client will pay you, and this is one of the deliverables which he expects from you. So this should be very nice. It should be very clear and should be understandable by anyone who reads it. So you should not just use a lot of technical words while writing a report, but instead you should use some words wherein anybody, either it's a developer, CXO, or your pen tester, anybody who reads the report can actually relate with it. So it should have different parts of the report for every type of audience. Now, can you be a pen tester? You should be asking this to yourself. So definitely you can be a pen tester. Anybody can be a pen tester, but there are some skill sets which are required when it comes to pen testing. What it is? It's a mix of offensive and defensive. So you need offensive skills as well as defensive skills. When it comes to offensive skills, you need skills like network exploitation, system enumerating, web application security testing, reverse engineering, coding. These are few things which you require in offensive. In defensive, you need information about administration, IT admin, administration, malware analysis, system administration, threat intel. These are few things which you need in defensive. So when you mix these skills, I'm not saying that you need all of these skills, but you need mix of these skills to be a successful pen tester. Just having one side of a skill set will not help you. Definitely you need a mix of skill sets in this field. Popular tools which you can use for penetration testing. So normally we go for open source tools like open source intelligence. OSINT is a framework which you can use for gathering the information about the target. Then there are some automatic vulnerability analysis tools like Nessus, Qualys, Nexus. There are various other tools as well. These are something which are normally used in the industries. You try anything. It's all almost the same and cater to our needs of vulnerability analysis. Then there is an open source very popular operating system called Kali Linux, which inbuilt has a lot of exploitation and scripting tools which are used for penetration testing or ethical hacking at different stages. So that's very suggested and recommended tool. Then for manual pen testing, there are tools like burp suits, zap proxy, nicto. These are few tools which are there which helps you in manual pen testing. nmap is very popular, which helps you during the information gathering part of port scanning and all. But the most important thing which you need is common sense. A lot of time vulnerabilities can be identified by a common sense, and you should understand that knowledge will always be greater than the tools. No amount of tool can help you if you don't have the basic knowledge. So don't be a script kiddie. Try to understand the basics and then perform the testing. Now, how you can be a pen tester? How, if you want to do it yourself, what are the next steps for you? What I suggest you, if you are in starting of your career, or maybe if you are looking to enter into pen testing, or maybe you're working some in some other domain and looking this domain excites you because of the pay or whatever reason, how you can get inside of this domain is first and most important thing is reading and learning. You have to continuously read and learn about this domain. This is something which changes daily. There are new attacks, new payloads, new attack vectors which are there introduced daily. So you have to keep updating yourself. So you have to follow this very important rule of reading and learning. The next important thing is join the community. Whichever city you are, whichever country you are, there would be a lot of local chapters of cyber or pen testing or ethical hacking which would be running. Do take part of those conferences, those events, community events, wherein you interact with a lot of industry experts and other fellow guys who work in the same domain. You get to learn a lot from them. So joining the community is very important. Then to give assurance about the quality or the skill sets which you have acquired, the training and certifications are important. A lot of time clients may ask you for a particular certificate. So that's why training and certificates are very important in this domain as well. And if you are looking to start, or if you are working in some other domain but want to pursue your career in penetration testing, the best way is to do a internship or volunteering first, get a feel of this domain, and then go as a full-time job into this domain. So that's how you can start and be a Jedi in this domain of penetration testing. What are the common paths which you see, or what are the career levels which you can achieve in penetration testing? Are you can start your career as security analyst or consultant. You can further move as senior analyst, senior consultant, engineer, an architect, or maybe a bit later as principal consultant. And then you can start leading a team or maybe developing new practices or services inside the organization. And finally, at a very high level, you can go to a CXO level wherein you can be a CISO or a director and head the complete cyber program for a company or your client. That should be your aspiration, and that should be how your career plan should go. Before I end this webinar, I just want to let you know penetration testing is part of cyber and it is always proactive. Remember it. You don't do penetration testing after you are hacked. You have to do penetration testing before any incident happens. So it should be a proactive approach. You should remember that penetration testing is always proactive. Don't wait for the attackers to attack first. Try to do it before anything happens. So that's my advice. For further, if you have any questions, I'm sure I'll answer you from the comment sections. Start taking the questions. But in case I'm not able to answer all the questions, feel free to get in touch with me. I regularly share updates on my Twitter handle and my LinkedIn profile. Apart from that, I have shared my personal details with you. Feel free to reach out to me in case of any concerns you have. Thank you.